they're dirty, that should be aired out publicly. And I'm personally a big fan of watching command staff get fucking aired out for the things they do wrong. What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Iron Infidel. As you can see, we are out in the shop today because we're gonna have a conversation about toxic leadership, specifically toxic command staff culture. So this is going to be an informational video with what to look for and how to document and take care of some of the things like this through the appropriate process. But something tells me that this video is going to have a lot of very good comments down there because people are going to tell us their best stories about some toxic environment they worked in. And it seems to be pervasive no matter where you are, law enforcement, military, private sector. I've worked in banking institutions, I worked in law enforcement, I was in the military, and I've seen toxic leadership and toxic command staff throughout the spectrum of jobs I've had throughout my life. Now, bad or toxic leaders are never a good thing, but when they're in command staff and there's more than one of them, this is really what destroys an agency, department, or even a corporate entity, because this is what rots an institution to its absolute core. It drives away all of the good employees, whether they're civilian or sworn, and it just seems to be something that is a very difficult animal to tackle. Institutions that are led by toxic command staff and law enforcement, though, these are the ones you hear about on the news, not for some like critical incident or something like that. These are the ones you hear about where the corruption is going on, dirty people doing dirty things. That is almost always pervasive in toxic command environments because the agency rots from the top down. Almost never does it rot from the bottom up. It's almost always from the top down when you have immoral, maybe some criminality stuff going on. And of course, that is bred through toxicity in the command staff. You kind of see these things go hand in hand when they do debriefings or investigations on agencies after like people get put in jail or removed from positions. There's always a form of toxicity there that was pervasive, ongoing, had been complained about, and not only the agency, but the city, township, or county did nothing about it when those complaints were made. We do have to set a couple of ground rules here for this conversation. The first one being, this is not directed at command staff or leadership that has achievable, maintainable, and realistic goals and then holds you accountable. That is management and leadership's job. Find out what the goals are, set goals, make sure they're achievable, and then enforce those on the back end to make sure that people are actually doing what they're paid to do, right? On the flip side of that, and I'm gonna use some language that I normally don't use, if you're a fucking piece of shit and you just get held accountable, you're just a piece of shit that got held accountable. And your peers, your teammates are probably happy that you finally got held accountable. There's a big difference between leadership that has achievable and maintainable goals and holds you accountable for those goals versus the other that we just talked about. The second thing is you've got to follow the process when we get into the steps you can take here to rid yourself of toxic leadership and command staff, either by your policies, general orders, a memorandum of understanding, the legal process, the department, the city, HR, whatever it is. If you fail to follow that process, sometimes these complaints can be thrown out or not investigated as seriously as they should be. So always follow the process to the T. What does toxic leadership or command staff actually look like? I'm gonna give you 3 of my examples, and I know the audience is gonna chime in, and we are gonna hear some absolutely wild shit down there. Now, the first example of toxic leadership to me is the do as I say, not as I do person. And these are pretty prevalent in command staff. They're the ones that will literally seem to write their own rules, do their own thing, but then hold you accountable when you do something outside of general orders or policy, whether it was a training failure or a training need, anything like that. This is the person who literally just kind of does what they want and never seems to be held accountable. This is the assistant chief that goes and has sex with his girlfriend behind his wife's back while he's on his lunch hour in uniform at a hotel and then gets found out, but he gets to make the claim that, well, you know, I'm an exempt employee. I was on my lunch hour, which I don't get paid for, so you can't do anything to me. And if you think that doesn't happen, it happens quite a bit. I've lived through that one personally and saw how that worked out. However, if you're a patrol officer, technically, since you get paid for your lunch hour because you're subject to calls for service, if that happened, and you got found out, you'd be fired. And that's exactly what this assistant chief told us in briefing one day. We're like, hey, what if an officer did this? Oh, I'd fire you. That is do as I say, not as I do. Example number 2, and my agency was full of these ones. This is the punitive one. That's what I call this person. They're generally somebody who's done little throughout their career besides ride the pine in an office somewhere. Maybe they were an SRO, maybe they were an IA for lifer kind of person who never really went out and crushed the street and chased bad guys and put them behind bars.
You see, we're putting the cover sheets on all TPS reports now before they go out. Did you see the memo about this?
These were your soft people that really don't have any confidence or command presence. So when they get that first taste of power, they just seem to be punitive and default to rank. Well, I've got this or this on my collar, so you're in trouble because you didn't do exactly what you were supposed to do here. There's a lot of reasons to deviate from policy out there. I've done it a lot throughout my career, and I never got in trouble for it because as long as the reason was good and the outcome is what you wanted it to be, you're generally going to be okay. That's why they're called general orders, because generally it's what you're supposed to do. However, remember that if command staff wants you, those general orders become very hard and fast very quickly. But the punitive one example always defaults to rank and punishment. They have no leadership, no mentorship skills. They don't have any of that. They usually lack self-confidence in any way because they've probably never really done anything in life absolutely besides ride the pine, sit behind a desk. And then when they get into leadership, they don't have any experience, they don't have any tools in their tool bag, so they just default to being Thor with a hammer and smashing everything. This type of person generally ruins a patrol team very quickly. The third example is one we have all seen, and this is the one I call the generous God, right? Because this person literally believes they're like Xerxes, right? In the scene from 300, I'm a generous God.
It is my divine power that I'm a generous God.
This person believes they have been anointed to rule or lead over you, and that whatever they say goes and it's going to happen this way. And they're the person that would say something like, you're lucky I don't fire you. You're lucky you still have your job, things like that. Or if it was up to anybody else, you'd all be fired. That's the type of absolute crap that you hear from the person that I call the generous God. Those are just 3 examples of absolute toxic personalities that I have run into in law enforcement, the military, and private sector. And I'm sure you guys have some really good ones that are already popping up down in the comments. So what can you actually do about this, and how do you actually do it? There are some steps you need to take. Step 1, this is extremely important. The conversation needs to be had and the information needs to be relayed, not only to that person directly, but to command staff and the city entity or department as a whole. Specific details need to be given to this person, whether it's through a supervisor, a sergeant, a lieutenant. And if your sergeants and lieutenants are afraid to go to command staff and say, hey, this is what entire batches of officers feel about you, without like having some kind of reprisal, that's how you know you have toxic leadership. But if they're too afraid to do that, then your leaders suck, right? Like I did that a lot when I was a sergeant. And yeah, sometimes I didn't like what they heard, but I was like, hey, you guys need to understand what people are feeling out there and like, you know, turn the ship so those feelings don't turn into something different. So your sergeants and lieutenants should be willing to do that. Unfortunately, most time that willingness to go up and bring complaints up generally dies at the sergeant level because lieutenants are looking for that next spot. But that initial information drop has to happen because now they are on notice, whether that's from a supervisor, whether it's through a lieutenant, whether it's through your legal representation at the association, the union. Everybody needs to be informed that there is a problem and everybody knows about it, because you don't ever want to give command staff wiggle room to say, well, we didn't know, because they will slime their way down that path instantly if they see it. The second step after notice has been given is documentation needs to be completed. And I mean on everything. Every policy violation you see, every bad order that's given, every bad directive that comes down, anytime you see command staff making infractions or that certain leader or command staff member making any infraction at all, no matter how small, if it's a violation of any city policy, county policy, township policy, general orders, HR, whatever it is, it needs to be documented and memorialized and very verbosely and to an absolute T on what occurred, and how it violated an order or directive, and lists the order or directive right in there. This is the ammunition for later, so command staff can't say, well, we don't see a violation here. You can give that to them in the way of documentation. Just like your supervisors and leadership are keeping a log on you for all the good and maybe bad things you did or things that you can improve on, you need to be doing that to your leadership as well, because they need to be held accountable just as you are in the work environment. You need to verify with a third party that these are absolutely violations, whether it's your union representation, legal representation. That way you don't have somebody who's just jaded keeping notes for the sake of keeping notes. It has to be true and correct violation with documentation. These things can usually be made in the way of an anonymous report as well, which is a good thing because sometimes you don't want to put your name on it, because we all know that nobody will provide some retribution like command staff. And when you have good solid information that there is a violation of policy or something maybe even worse, take that directly to human resources or the city or the town or the county or whatever it is. Don't go through IA, because IA is the chief's harem. That's his breeding pool, and they're generally going to do whatever he tells them to do, because most people that go to internal affairs are pretty much just slurping the chief to get their next promotion or piece of brass on their collar. And then be prepared to wait for like 6 to 9 months or longer, because these things will take time. It can't be a one-off. There has to be a distinct pattern, and there's generally going to have to be more than one singular complaint. A third step, and this one is easy, if there is any form, and I mean any form to the slightest degree of a sexual harassment issue, even if it's third party, you witness it, you better report that, because if you witness it and don't report it, now you are on the hook for that. However, if you see generally people that are toxic in the work environment, they will do stupid things in the work environment like sexual harassment because they think they can get away with it. If you witness that, these are absolute gold, because they can be reported third party, and instantaneously the department is going to have the city or human resources or the county or the township come in, generally be a very large part, if not take that investigation over, and they move extremely swiftly on these. I have witnessed this more than once throughout my career. It was a member of command staff this happened with, and my head spun. That dude got moved on so fast, relieved of his duties, and excommunicated from the department. So if you get one of these, it's absolute gold, and just use it instantly. Number 4, and this is another great one, but you're gonna need the documentation and you're going to need numbers on this one, and this is hostile work environment, which is kind of weird to say because our work environment is generally hostile pretty often, but your leadership and command staff never should be. The berating, the belittling, things like this, public shaming, that shit has no place in the modern work environment. If somebody needs to be given the yell, they need to be given the come to Jesus, 4-finger thumb krill drill sergeant in the face kind of thing. You do that in your office when nobody else is around, or 6 blocks away behind the Circle K. That's a conversation that lives between you and the employee who you are trying to get on the right track so you don't have to fire them. Those should never be done publicly. Any threats of intimidation, retribution, all of these things that people in sometimes leadership positions will do, none of that shit is acceptable, and they need to be documented very verbosely and with extreme detail, not only on what actually occurred, but how it made that person feel during the incident. Because just like documenting a crime of self-defense or something, it's about how you feel as the victim of that situation that's really going to push this over the edge. And these, again, like sexual harassment things, the city is going to come in and they have no patience for a hostile work environment style thing, because this is what drives employees somewhere else. And generally both sexual harassment and hostile work environment end in litigation, and the city and county and township generally just pays out to make it go away. So they are very quick to act on these things, but you have to have documentation and you have to be able to bring the person forward to be the actual complainant. It can be reported generally anonymously or third party, but this one's a little bit more tough. So that person's gonna have to willingly go and conduct the interviews, but I've personally seen this one work. We had a sergeant driven out and demoted because she literally wrecked 2 patrol teams. She was probably the prime example and the worst person to ever be given stripes I have seen in my life, and it showed through. Every person on every patrol team that worked for her directly went and made a complaint numerous times before the department did anything. Number 5, and this is a good one, this is the vote of no confidence, and this is the nuclear option right next to just direct litigation from your association or representation. This one's interesting because technically you can do the vote of no confidence on anybody in leadership, but it usually is reserved for really crappy chiefs of police. And it's pretty hilarious when this happens, and we'll talk about why. But this is really a big one, but you have to have numbers on this. This can't be a group of 10 or 15 officers out of 500. I would say you're going to need a good solid 60%. You need more than half. Once you start getting to half, this is where people pay attention, because a vote of no confidence in your police chief or leadership, this is where it gets public. The media finds out, the city's on notice, mayoral candidates are on notice, the city council, town council, politicians now become involved because people are calling their office wondering why the employees and the officers have no faith in their leadership or command staff structure. These are the kind of things that get people removed almost instantly, because now politics come into play and public perception, because generally the media is going to report on this. It's pretty interesting when it happens, and it usually ends extremely publicly and very ugly for the people that are involved. But you've got to be willing to put your names on this one, because when you put that vote of no confidence before the council or just bring it to the chief from the association or union meeting, everybody knows who's a member, and sometimes if it doesn't work out in your favor, that chief's going to want some payback. And then of course the other step is you just leave and go to a better place to work, but that doesn't really fix the problem. If you think it's salvageable, I think you have a duty to fix what's going on, or at least do your best. Otherwise, you're just like the person that throws trash out on the side of the road and hopes somebody else cleans it up for him. You've also got to realize that there are no guarantees. It may not work, but yet again, there's also a reason why most police chiefs only last like 4 to 7 years or 2 to 5 years, depending on whose study you want to believe when it comes down to the lifespan of a police chief. And for any of these steps to actually work, unless it's one of the big ones like sexual harassment or hostile work environment, is you need competent representation at your association, union, and legal representation as well. If your union president or association president is slurping the chief and just looking for his next promotion when he becomes, goes back to the line from being the president of the association or something, he's not going to fight for your best interest. So make sure the person you install as the leader of your representation isn't someone just looking for a stepping stone. Number 2, you have to have the intestinal fortitude to put your name on it sometimes. You have to be the one willing to go make the complaint and see how far you can push it, and it may not work out in your favor. And the last thing is you need the numbers. You need like a solid 51% or better, right? Because when the city or the county, all the elected officials, the bureaucrats on the town council, when they look at it, the higher the percentage of people are saying, yeah, this is really bad, the more likely they are to take it seriously. If you go in there with 10%, not going to work out for you. Now, for some of the what I'm sure are going to be glorious comments down below on toxic command staff experiences, we got to set some rules there too. Make sure that you are not going to get yourself in trouble for posting something down below in the comments, because this is open for the world to see. Don't violate policy. Number 2, don't name names that are going to lead back to you if you could get in trouble. Right? That should be pretty simple stuff. But before you go down there and blast off what I'm sure is going to be an amazing story, guard yourself, guard your job, because not every department is okay with you airing their laundry out there, although you should be able to. It's kind of one of those freedom of speech things, and if they're dirty, that should be aired out publicly. And I'm personally a big fan of watching command staff get fucking aired out for the things they do wrong. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your best stories down below. It's still a great career field. I hope a lot of you are still out there on the grind doing the daily thing and getting that next generation trained up. We'll see you guys on the next one.